and we are going to get started. It looks like the event is being recorded. Um, and that'll, I think, be posted to the the YouTube after the presentation. So welcome to Different Thoughts on Different Thinkers. We are for neurodivergent Oswego and former Oswego students. My name is Sky Minkoff. My pronouns are they, them. We'll be starting off here. Let me pull up my notes 1 second. Thank you for joining us for this moderated panel discussion. We're, like I said, four students, each with different brains and different experiences, and we look forward to speaking with you today. We're first going to go around and introduce ourselves quickly. My name is Sky. Like I said, I use they, them pronouns. I'm a late diagnosed autistic, and I just graduated from Oswego 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Some of you may know me through the program I started for neurodivergent students called Hack Your Brain, which we're happy to continue into the next school year. Great. I'm going to pass it along to Reynie.
Hi, I'm Reynie. I use they, them pronouns. I'm starting my third year here, and I will be taking over Hack Your Brain next year.
Great.
Hello.
And then Wren.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Wren. I am also a third year student. I use she, her pronouns, and at the moment I do not have any official diagnoses.
And Kate, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Matthews. My pronouns are she or they, and I was diagnosed early with autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. I'm a transfer student about to enter my third year of being Schrodinger's senior, I joke.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. You can move on to the next slide, Wren. This is a little bit about our presentation today. We're going to strive to create a neurodivergent-friendly space in this little Zoom room we have going on right now. I want to point out that you can turn on closed captioning for yourself if you would like to. Along the bottom of your Zoom screen, either it should be there as an option, or if your screen is smaller, then it will be under the More section. So if that makes this presentation more accessible to you, I invite you to do that. We also encourage you to attend to your own needs during the presentation, whether that's getting up, moving around, keeping your video off if that's helpful for you, and I don't know, knitting, things like that. We invite you to do those things while you're here with us today. Here's our brief agenda, just in terms of our introduction to our presentation. We'll go over a bit of terms here. We'll define neurodivergence. We'll talk about the goals for this presentation, the structure of the presentation, and then we'll bring out questions for our panelists today. Ryan, I can move on to the next slide. Oh, and I included, real quick, a QR code link to the slides if you'd like to follow along or have access to that after the presentation is over. Thank you. All right, so what is neurodivergence? What do we mean by neurodiversity? These terms are thrown around a lot, and if you've been to any of the presentations I've done about this past year, this shouldn't sound new, but I'm excited to keep talking about what this means for folks who, have questions or aren't sure. So neurodiversity is the diversity of human minds, the infinite variation in neurocognitive functioning within our species. Neurodiversity is a fact. It's a way of life. It just is, just like any other kind of human variation or diversity. Term moving on from that would be neurodivergent. This refers to the way a person's processing differs from what dominant societal standards consider to be normal and acceptable, in air quotes. This is a very broad term. It can refer to forms of neurodivergence that are innate or acquired, either one. Most people, when they hear the term right now, think about autism, ADHD, but it can mean any number of ways that our brains function differently, again, than what society considers to be normal. Folks who've experienced traumatic brain injury, anything from OCD to dyslexia, dyspraxia, infinite ways that our brains are different, but if that difference means that you experience challenges in your day-to-day life, you can certainly identify as neurodivergence. That's where we're coming from with our conversation today. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So what are our goals for our presentation today? Our goals are to help faculty and staff learn more about how to make their spaces, classrooms, and workplaces more neurodivergent friendly, to share the varied experiences of different neurodivergent Oswego students, to create a place to ask questions directly to people who are willing to answer, and to open up dialogue between students and staff, faculty, administration. We also want to be clear what we're not here to do, and you can go to the next slide, Wren. Thank you. We are not here to answer specific questions about specific students or situations. That's just not something that we feel comfortable with talking about or are able to answer. We will not be answering questions that go beyond the scope of our own personal experiences or the experiences of people who have given us permission to share them. We cannot provide a checklist of things to do to be more neurodivergent friendly or accessible. We can certainly talk about ways that things can change, but we're not here to give you a checklist that you can check off as you do them. And we're also going to be avoiding using deficit-based language, and we invite you to think about your language when you are talking and asking questions to do the same. Next slide. All right, so what is the structure of this discussion? How will this go? We are going to start with a few questions prepared for our panelists. That's going to be first, and then we'll open up the discussion to questions from the audience. We want to say that you can ask your questions via the chat or spoken, whatever works for you. However, please note that audio processing can be a challenge for some neurodivergent folks. This makes written questions more accessible in general than spoken questions. Therefore, if you ask your question out loud, we ask that you then type your question into the chat. This gives a written record. It allows everyone to read the question and reference back to the question as the conversation moves on. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to structure this conversation a little bit more than perhaps other Q&As or panel discussions have been structured. We want to think very critically about the questions that we are inviting you to ask. Therefore, this is a list of some questions that we ask you to ask yourself when you're formulating your questions, and we'll copy and paste this into the chat again so you can reference as we move forward in our discussion. The first question I want you to ask yourself, is this a question that needs to be posed and answered in front of everyone? We have a lot of people here today, which is great. We're very excited for that, but we just want to be conscientious about these things. Is this a question that's respectful of our time, energy, and resources as neurodivergent students? Would you feel comfortable answering perhaps a similar type question in a public forum like this? Are you open to hearing a response to your question that you might not expect or might not want to hear? And is the scope of the question appropriate? For example, is it neither too broad to be unanswerable by 4 students, nor is it too narrow or targeted like to a specific incident to be relevant or even able for one of us to answer? Thank you. Next slide. So to kick us off here, we have some initial questions for our panelists. We are going to go around to each of our panelists for these questions one at a time, and they're welcome to answer them as they want. They're also welcome to pass on the questions if they don't wish to answer them or don't have anything that they'd like to add to the question. Great. How are you all doing? Wren, Kate, and Reynie, you get a thumbs up? Awesome. Great. Perfect. So right now I see Wren first in my screen, so we're going to talk to Wren first. Wren, what is something unique about the way your brain processes things that you're celebrating this week?
This week I had a great opportunity to visit a maritime museum, and that was very exciting. And For those of you who do not know, I am an English major and one of the few who has not read Moby Dick, but that has not limited my interest in whaling and different things like that. So it was really interesting that I could recall all the information I learned when I was a wee little kid that loved learning about those things and be able to have a conversation with one of the people who worked at the museum about the different things that they had there and the history behind them.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. Kate, I see you next in my little screens here. What's something unique about the way your brain processes things that you're celebrating this week?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sky. Well, something I'm particularly fond of that my brain does this week is, well, okay, I like the way we welcome each other. I like the way we take care as neurodivergent people to understand each other and to try and make things a little easier on each other than they were on us. But for specifics, I am very fond of the fact that some of you may know that I was traveling this past week, and part of the moving from place to place, it was really cool and I was really lucky. Part of it was having to pack and repack my bags as time went on, and I was really pleased at when I was able to sort of zone out of the world. I was able to make everything fit, which is normally quite hard for me.
That sounds very satisfying.
Thanks.
All right, Reynie, your turn. What's something about how your brain processes things that you're celebrating this week?
So this week I'm unpacking from moving back from college, and I've found that um, because of my organization situation, I'm very used to having stuff scattered all over the place, and that's made it much easier to find things as I need them from my bags.
Awesome. Thank you. So I wanted to give a little bit of context about why we want to start with that question. We want to focus on the kind of awesome and unique things that our brains do, and not just on the challenges that we face as students, which are very real. But one thing that we like to do, especially coming from the program Hack Your Brain that I was working on, is really build that community and give ourselves support. And celebrate the things that we do that other folks might not see every day. So thank you all for sharing. Great. So what have been some now we go into challenges. What have been some challenges that you have faced in your college career related to your neurodivergence? We can go in the same order, or I can pick someone else here. All right, we'll go in the same order. How about you, Wren?
One of the biggest challenges that I've had as a student is probably managing all of the things I do. Um, I know that I've had a good number of you as my professors, and some of you have even seen my Google Calendar. So with that and the notes that are scrawled all the way up my arm, it's evident that I don't have a great memory and that I need to put things down to remember them. So it's difficult trying to figure out not only how to balance all the things I need to do, but remember them all. And another thing that I struggle with is executive function and finding the motivation to begin something. Because once I start things, it's usually fine. But the taking the first step and kind of admitting to myself, oh, we're gonna start this essay now, that it usually leads to me doing a lot of things on Sunday night because I don't want to deal with it this weekend. This is my time to be able to breathe a little bit. And you want me to answer the
Yeah.
sub question now? Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
One of the things that has been most valuable for me is um, I have been able to find very unique solutions to some of those problems. As I said before, use Google Classroom a lot, and it has helped with my organization. It's something that has worked incredibly well for me. And because of some of those strategies that I've developed, I've been able to help other students and can overall manage things myself, sometimes even setting false due dates to be earlier than they actually are. So maybe that Sunday night of fear and panic can be on a Friday night. So, worst case, I have an extra day or two afterwards to actually finish the assignment.
Awesome. Reynie, I see you next in my windows here. Do you want to answer these two related questions for us?
Yeah. I found that my biggest problem with college is that I really cannot guess how much time anything is going to take. And I get it wrong all of the time. So I have a lot of trouble getting assignments done before they're due, and also understanding how much time I actually do have in between classes to get where I'm going or work on what I have. Um, and I've the most valuable part of being at a college for me is syllabi. It's really, really nice to be able to check the requirements and all the information for the class so easily because otherwise I will completely forget, and it's much easier to have a document I can read.
Definitely. Those are really good points. Thank you, Reynie. Kate, what have been some challenges you faced, and what's been most valuable for you in facing those challenges?
Oh boy. I'm trying to think of something that hasn't already been said because I relate hard to a lot of these. Yeah. I have struggled with a lot of these. Executive functioning is hard. And not only that, the demoralization of struggling with some of this has affected my mental health, making it even harder to complete my assignments. I I really do care about doing my best work, but the problem is that manifests in perfectionism, and I get so overwhelmed trying to just because I even before I've started something that I wind up not doing it at all or doing it very, very late. And I compare my process a bit like I compare my process on getting assignments done a bit like either a bit I compare it to a train. It's hard to get one started, and once you've got one started, it goes. But once it's going, it's really hard to get it to stop. So I tend to either turn in very detailed, dense things late, or I have a hard time turning them in at all. Other things have been teachers' attitudes. Some just I'm used to being the guinea pig. I have a lot of times encountered teachers go, "Oh, I've never had someone like you before," with the emphasis on those words. And I have to teach them about the Americans with Disabilities Act. I have to teach them about accommodations. It's not comfortable and it's not fun. And I get through it by telling myself that at least some future student will have to go through what I did. But it's still hard. And of course, last but not least, throughout my education, like elementary school, as early as elementary school, I was hearing, "Oh, she's so smart if she could just focus," forgetting that that's kind of the point of ADHD, is that I can't. I'm trying very hard, but I can't. And a lot of blame gets placed on the kid rather than the fact that the kid is just not shaped for the way things are set up. Something that's been really precious and invaluable to me is patience. Patience from teachers, patience and attempts to understand. You don't need to have some encyclopedic knowledge of the ins and outs of how my brain works. All I need you to do is be open-minded and willing to listen. Some of my best experiences have been with teachers who may not know much, but they are trying. They are patient, and also another thing that helps is working with the tutors, one-on-one reassurance that no, I'm not messing this up, and just gentle reminders to do something, not you should do it or else you're doomed. Yeah, patience and empathy, that's helped.
Yeah, that's really real. Thank you all for sharing your answers to that question. Um, Our next question here is, what are some specific challenges you have faced related to getting your access needs met? Kate, can we start with you?
Sure. Are we talking specifically about here, SUNY Oswego, or in college in general, or education in general?
I was still on mute. Yes, I think if we can focus on Oswego, that would be great. That's most relevant to the folks in this room. If you have something that feels really relevant to college that you want to share as well, that you think folks should know, go for it.
All right. So specific challenges is that lack of knowledge. A lot of people, I have had teachers look at my accommodations and go, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me. Treat it like a checklist and go, this must not apply to me. And it's like, no, it really does. It's nerve-wracking sometimes when you know what you need and the teacher just doesn't do anything or seem to think you need it. Like I have auditory processing stuff, but I also I find it easier to listen to an audio version of a text and read along to help with processing it more fully. And I have this one teacher who kept promising that they would fix it. Like they had a bunch of scanned in like 20 pages or more reading assignments for class that were necessary to do. And they kept promising, oh, I will make them accessible. And they didn't the second time around. The first time around, they thought that was the tutor's job to help me get through the mandatory reading. It's not. And I fear what happens should a vision impaired student need to be able to read the stuff, but
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Reynie, do you have anything you'd like to share with us about getting your access needs met at Oswego?
I do not have any relevant experience.
Okay, great. Wren, how about you?
I do have one experience from the past semester. As I said, I don't have any formal diagnoses of any kind, but I do have some audio processing disorder like symptoms where I have some difficulty hearing things, not based on volume or like an inability to physically hear things, but just to be able to mentally comprehend and understand, especially when there are multiple sounds at the same time. And I had a film class that was in Lanigan. And so there were a lot of echoes, and often the professor would talk over the movie, explaining things as we watched. And many of the actors in these movies were not English speakers as their first language, or it was something where they spoke with an accent. And they were very old movies, so it was often muffled. And I had a very difficult time hearing some of the different things that were being said. So I had asked the professor to please turn on the captions. And he claimed that it took away from the visual aspect of the movie and did not. After that class, I had gone to accessibility, the Office Accessible Resources, and they had sent an email to this professor, and he responded with the same thing he said to me, and that all of the films are available outside of class, so I would need to watch them out of class with the captions. So this led to me rewatching about 9 movies out of the class with captions in the library. So it was possible, but I had to spend more than double the amount of time actually fixing that. Well, not fixing it, but being able to have access to the resources and be able to fully understand the things that were being said and that I would be tested on.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those experiences. Those are super real, and you're not the only ones who've experienced similar situations. Um, Great. So our last little prepared question here is pretty broad. What do you want educators to know? What do you hope educators get out of this presentation that we have if no other questions are asked? Let's see, Reynie, can we start with you?
Every single student is an individual, so their needs will be different, and you may need to adjust aspects of your instruction to best reach all of your students.
Awesome, thank you. Wren, I see you next in my little boxes, so I'll pick on you next.
Things aren't always consistent. One day, one thing might be an issue, and another day, it might not be an issue. Sometimes it could be like the iridescent lights ringing, and that could drive someone crazy. I know that sometimes does for me, and other times that's not an issue at all. Um, and I think that Kate had said something very important. Like you don't need an encyclopedic amount of knowledge on how your students' brains work. I don't even have that for my own brain. I'm troubleshooting things just as much. So it really does come down to just having patience. And sometimes it's something where just opening a question up to the student, what do you need that would help you? And then working with the student one on one if they feel comfortable with it to find a solution that both of you think would be beneficial in helping the student learn the material.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Kate, can you round us out here with this last answer to this last question?
Well, I suppose I can start with we are trying. We are trying. We really do care. And it means something to us when you try and reach back out to us. We we it's hard for us to ask for accommodations. There's so much external pressure and internal pressure that says, "Oh, no, just get along. Don't make a fuss. Don't make a fuss. You can work if you just work twice as hard in the same amount of time and don't really do stuff outside of class, then you can keep up without asking for help." And it's hard to ignore that little voice that says, "Just blend in. It'll be safer." But our job here isn't to blend in. Our job here is to learn. We want to learn, and you want us to learn. What do I want educators to know? We care. I, I think that's all I can say.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on these important questions. It's great to hear from everyone. We have just about 20 minutes left in this presentation, and we're going to open up to questions from the audience. So Wren, you can end the screen share so we can see everyone's faces. Like I mentioned earlier, we're happy and excited to hear from everyone on their questions. I have posted in the chat the questions to ask yourself while you're formulating questions. And like I mentioned earlier, if you voice your question out loud, which is totally fine, we also ask that you then type your question into the chat so we have a written record and we can come back to it if we need to. We're trying to be as accessible as possible to everyone who's here. Great. So I think just we're going to let everyone take a deep breath. That was a lot that everyone shared. And open it up. So whoever has a question, we're happy to hear from you. Maddie, thank you. I know there's politics associated with the use of AI sustainably, but I wanted to ask, amidst the rapid advancement of AI during your college careers, has AI benefited your neurodivergence in any way? So we'll give everyone a second to think about that question. I think that's a very interesting and valid question, Maddie. Thank you for asking. And if whichever one of the panelists has a thought first, feel free to jump in. Turn on your sound and jump in.
Um, oh, you want to go first?
I just was going to mention that I'm not really the best person to ask about this because I don't use AI out of many personal reasons.
I was going to say something pretty similar to me. My majors are education, English, and creative writing, so AI is the ultimate taboo, I guess, for all of those things. It's the big evil. The only thing I really have used it for is notes, where I have, like, specifically for that film class, um, I had collective notes from the entire class where everyone gave me their notes, and I ended up with around 300 pages of notes for the exam. So it was condensing those into something readable and then being able to provide them for our exams. But I don't see that being anything specific towards neurodivergency. It's just the only use I've really had.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
I
AI
have
is
never. Oh,
go.
I've never used AI for anything because I can't trust its accuracy.
Yeah, it's kind of a buzzword, but it's very good at collating large pieces of data, at processing them, but it keeps being used for creative measures when it's a long thing.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, I think
the
that's
next question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. I just want to kind of wrap things up with that particular question. I think that's really interesting to think about AI specifically, and I think that um a lot of the students I've talked to have actually cited their concerns with AI as why they don't use AI. So I think that's really interesting to think about. There is actually, like, even if professors think that students use AI a lot, my personal experience talking with other students is that it's not used as much as other people think that it might be used. That might be changing with like younger students, but yeah, I think that's interesting. Um, Great. So we have another question, this one from Holly Stone. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Looking back, what advice would you give your high school self about preparing for college as a neurodivergent student?
This one might be heavy. Go on, Ren.
Mine isn't super heavy. Like I said, I have been diagnosed. It's something where everything that I have come to know about myself is from some other friends who have had their diagnoses and kind of, oh, it sounds like that's pretty similar to what I have, or those are a lot of things that I struggle with too. Um, and organization has always been something I have had a difficult time with, and I remember my father, who worked a lot with computers, telling me about Google Classroom, and oh, I was like, I'm not gonna need that. It's my own schedule. I know what I need. Um, so I just wished that I knew how much that would help me, because my first few semesters here, I had a tough time with my time management. And I also wish that I knew more about how to balance my time accurately, because um, I spent heaps and heaps of time doing essays my first year here, and it was honestly pretty unmanageable. And I am still surprised looking back how I made it through as I did.
Thank you. Kate or Rainey, would you like to add anything?
I would tell myself to make a spreadsheet or some other list of every assignment because you will forget. And I did.
I would tell myself, you're gonna make it. You're going to make it through this. Your parents are right. It really is better in college because you can stop interacting with people who are cruel or unkind or ableist, and that includes teachers. You can what they're saying to you is not true, and the ones who mean well but say the worst things, They're not right. You will survive this. And yeah, it will be hard, but also my first year, people think, oh, you're autistic, you're ADHD, you're going to forget to do all the important things and fritter away your time on fun. I spent so much time locked up in my dorm room working on my assignments ahead of time that I burnt myself out. So the importance of friends and the importance of taking time off for yourself and listening to yourself. And also the importance of don't try and cram yourself into a neurotypical schedule. Your brain works differently than most people. That's okay. If you try and force yourself into the mold designed for someone else, you are going to lose it. So yeah, just your job isn't to be perfect. Your job is to be Kate.
Awesome. I really like the way you ended that. Your job isn't to be perfect. Your job is to be yourself. So thank you so much. Thanks all for sharing. We got a lot more questions here. So I'm going to go into a question from Professor Jayawardena. Many of the educators are also neurodivergent, if not diagnosed, and have the attitude of, if I did it, why can't you, right? Something like that. I think we've all kind of maybe experienced something like that. Using the toxic logic of all Herdman talked about loan forgiveness, was being debated a few years ago. They may see themselves as grand progressives of the highest order, but their practices are punitive and ableist, or at least some educators are. Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like I don't hear a question in there, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll move on to the next question.
Sorry, I'm in rubbish clothes.
That's okay.
That's because I'm also I know I'm neurodivergent too, and I know that this is the way that I encounter some of the kind of narratives that you've shared. I definitely know because my students talk about that, like not being able to having to spend double the time watching a film or text that could easily be made available as a voice recorded kind of something that's audible, which I find really useful. There's like certain texts that now offer that. And it's so nice to be able to have that alongside while you're reading. It makes it better for really everybody's learning, is what I've learned, not just for the neurodivergent people. But yeah, I think that the problem I often hear, and I've heard consistently from a couple of people, including I think Kate, that you're put in a position to have to educate the person who's supposed to be mentoring and caring for your education. That's a power difference thing that should never happen, because it invites resentment, it invites disrespect towards a person who should be receiving care. And of course, as a faculty member, I've experienced that from my own colleagues. When I speak about discriminatory practices, I encountered bullying, I encountered horrific conditions, which some of my new colleagues know about, because they don't experience it as white, women or men, or however, they're not, they have nice friendships with those people. So they cannot believe that you are being targeted that way. And having real impact on your life, real impact on your education, real impact on your learning. And so that should be the training that the educator receives, not for you to have to do ever. Whether it's about being a minoritized person in learning disability ways, or racial or gender, whichever version of minoritization that you experience, it should never be you should never be put in that position.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate your voice in this conversation. Great. It looks like we have a few more questions in the chat, so I'm going to jump over to those. Professor Donnelly says, thanks so much for the session. It's fantastic. I'm curious if you might share a particular class project or even a non-academic project you've engaged in that let your way of thinking and processing flourish. I love that question, and I see a smile from Kate. Do you want to start us off?
Well, yeah, that actually reminds me of one of the best experiences I've ever had. My first quote unquote job was volunteering as an unpaid intern at my local library, the Corning Library, the Southeast Bend. And it was amazing for many reasons, including that my coworkers rolled with me. They treated like, oh, I'm not so good at this, as like, okay, then we won't assign you to jobs that do that. Like, you tend to panic when it's time to answer the phone with the little old lady who always wants to ask about these particular things and chat. Okay, we won't have you do that then. And oh, you have a lot of patience and find like resorting the books or sorting beads for the arts and crafts center meditative and calming, while most of us find it obscenely boring. Great. Please come help me fold the brochures and do this stuff. So they treated me like the things that other people had treated as a downside, they treated it as an asset. They complimented me on how good of a job I did. They made me feel valued, and they looked for ways that they could work with me instead of trying to press me into a mold. I really felt wonderful and accepted because, yeah, you will find these things. Side note, you will find that your student might be amazing at a special interest, which is it's more than just an interest. It's like, oh, I'm fond of that. It's a passion that drives us. We tend to have like multiple of them, and we tend to know amazing amounts of information about them, and we can we can work them into practically anything. So if you can find a way to let your students' special interests drive their projects, you will have no shortage of material. So work with your students. They will surprise you in amazing ways.
Awesome. Thank you. Just real quick, I want to jump in. I'm not really supposed to answer questions, but I want to jump in and echo that special interest point. The classes where I've had a chance to create or pursue my own special interest within the framework of the class, right? Of course, like within whatever the context of that class is. That's been so gratifying. Also stressful because I feel like I need to, put together like a 50-page paper or something. But the project just kind of can happen more easily in a way because we're just so ready with that information. We love to share that information. Okay. Keeping myself quiet now. Wren or Reynie, would you like to add something there?
I definitely agree that the passion project is really important. And I think that there are a lot of ways that can be encouraged, and it doesn't need to be explicit. Sometimes it could just be optional structuring, where I've had some assignments specifically in the past semester with Professor Radhakrishnan, where I was told provide a reflection for this book, or your final project is to create a literary canon. And they're very fun assignments that allow a student to take it in a lot of directions. And while that is very exciting at times, it can also be very difficult because it's where do I even start? Not only do you not have to find the motivation to start, you need to figure out where and what you're going to do. So one thing that I was a big fan of was that Professor I had a very, very in-depth syllabus with examples and optional templates and things like that let me do the assignment in that way, or I could find a way that it worked better for myself. I think that by adding optional parameters, it lets a student break them in different areas, but also have a general scaffolding that they can take down as they've started and have an idea of what they actually want to go and do. Because when they're more rigid, sometimes a student might go on and write an amazing paper, but it's not answering a very specific, narrow pathway that the professor might have been looking for. So there are times that, yes, sometimes a narrow path is required to have that experience, but I think it might also be worth asking, why does it need to be so specific?
Awesome. Thanks, Wren. I'm looking at the time. We have 3 minutes left. So, Reynie, I'd love to hear your answer to this question. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to the rest of our questions here. But I just want to say again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for asking some really awesome questions. So, Reynie, take it away.
I can't actually think of anything for this question.
All right, no worries. Well then, I think we'll end it here because I feel like answering any more questions will take us way over our 50-minute time. I think, again, thank you all for coming here. I know this has been recorded if you want to reference it in the future. We really appreciate your time and everything, and again, the great questions that were asked. So thank you.
Just one quick comment I would like to say before we do all go.
Yeah.
Thank you, first of all, for all coming. But I would also like everyone to realize that these questions are amazing and we loved every one. But we signed up to do this. So if you have a student, it's probably not best without asking beforehand if they're comfortable with it to start asking them these questions, because they might not be ready for it. It might not be something they want to do. So it's important to be aware that this is a space that we decided to come to answer these questions, but it's best not to pounce on a student with a sneak attack and be like, hey, I have all these questions.
Great point, Wren. Thank you for closing us out with that comment. It's true. We all agreed that we wanted to be here. We agreed to be recorded for this. We knew what we were signing up for. I want to quick point out that we did a lot of planning for this presentation. We thought of questions that we wanted to start the presentation with that would hopefully frame the discussion, and I think that seemed successful, so I'm very glad that we did that. And we also talked about a lot of questions that could possibly come up that we might not want to answer, and how we would go about doing that. So again, I want to acknowledge all of the time and labor that went into this. It wasn't just a simple turn on the Zoom and get going. And again, thank you all for being here. I know that we've had a lot of personal relationships, a lot of people in this room. So it's been a great experience to have this room open with you all and this discussion. So thank you. And I'll stick around here until the very end.